Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy the Geek Taker. We're coming at you with another Marvel Phase 4 if it kept the original timeline. Today's movie, we are talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 has one of the wildest behind the scene journeys that we've ever seen in the MCU, with some of the biggest butterfly effects that we've probably seen in the movie industry. Like what we got in 2023, that's not really the journey that we were going to get back in 2020. So let's break down everything that has changed, from delays, anything to do with the script writing, the whole James Gunn situation of it all. This movie had a completely different journey than what we got. So the original plan. So originally, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was supposed to come out in 2020. Never had a set month, but it had a set year at least. And as we know, this movie came out in May of 2023, which is kind of ironic because I know Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 came out in May of 2017, I think. And then Guardians 1, I think, was May of was it May of 2014? Because I think it came out right before Age of Ultron. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It's a summer movie. Anyways, what we know, James Gunn had finished the script well in advance. And by most reports, the core story, nothing changed. This Rocket's backstory was always the plan. James Gunn is, I believe, said that Rocket was always like the main character of the Guardians, the emotional center. That just didn't really change at all. But this is where things start to get dicey. 2018, James Gunn gets fired over some controversial tweets that we're not going to discuss on the show. If you know, you know. But at the end of the day, he did apologize deeply for the things that he has said. But if you're like the Snyder fans, you are still beating that dead horse because you think that your dead universe is going to come back if you keep doing it. Ironic, isn't it? Anyways, that basically freezes the whole production of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But not only just on the production side, but also on the acting side, because you have the stars such as Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Dave Bautista. They actually came out and they publicly defended Gunn. And they were very, 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 very vocal about not doing this movie without him, no matter who was going to direct it, which the rumor at that time was going to be Taika Waititi, going off the big success of Thor Ragnarok. And thank Odin, we did not get that. Because if you watch Love and Thunder, which you can watch that video in the link in the description, that would have been a terrible movie, I think. I don't think Taika would have handled that at all good. And to add on top of that, some of them wouldn't have even worked with Taika, like Dave Bautista. He was probably the one who was the most vocal about this. He is very good friends with Mr. Gunn, and he was not going to do this movie without him. And Marvel, they had Gunn's script, they had no directors, they almost didn't have a cast. They didn't know what to do with this movie. So essentially, it was in Marvel developmental hell because they didn't know what the next steps should be. Now we get into the delay in DC. Hmm. While all of this is happening, Warner Brothers calls up James Gunn and he goes over there and he makes The Suicide Squad. Came out in 2020 and it was a major success on at least HBO Max. And obviously, because it came out during COVID, it didn't have a theatrical run, but it was a huge movie. It was a very good movie. And thus, that slowly led to the domino effect of him switching franchises, heading over to DC. And that pushed Guardians back even further. Because eventually, Marvel and Disney sees, I think it's mainly Disney. I don't think Feige had an issue at all. I do think this is Disney. Disney decides to reverse the decision after the movie and rehire James Gunn. But by then, the MCU timeline has already shifted because of COVID, because of all the quantity that they've announced. So Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is not just delayed now, it's in a completely different era, which leads us to the changes around it in the MCU. This is where things get interesting because all the while that James Gunn is no longer with Marvel, he had, or correction, before he was fired, he had the script, like I said, he had a plan, but then he gets fired, and we get Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, where the Russo brothers decided to kill Gamora and then bring back a different version of her in the same timeline. And Thor also joins the Guardians, and the Guardians were going to be in Thor Love and Thunder. None of this was a part of Gunn's decisions at all. Just to the point of like even the Infinity Stones. He wasn't going to do that, and he kind of put that together last minute through some bullshit story. but it worked and it was great. Thank you, Gunn. You are a genius. Anyways, so when Gunn comes back, he has to shift things very slightly to make it make sense for where these characters end up. For example, that version of Gamora in Volume 3, he had to rewrite her to be a part of the Ravengers to make it make sense. He had to get the Guardians away from Thor, so he had to talk with Taika to split them up, so that way he could make his vision, leading us into script changes. Or, well, the lack of script changes. So, like I've Gunn said multiple times, the script never really changed except for the Gamora of it all, really. The core story, Rocket, the High Evolutionary, the emotional ending for the team, that was always his original vision. What did change, though, were smaller things: character dynamics, Gamora and Peter, timeline placement, again, 2020, 2023. There were also some tone adjustments after working on DC. But this wasn't a full rewrite situation. It was more of like adapting to the new MCU reality that we live in currently. Going back to 2020, though, COVID. Obviously, this hits. Whatever production they had on this movie after Gunn's fired is pushed back again. The entire industry slows down. Everything basically shuts down. Guardians of 3 doesn't even start filming until much, much, much later. So there is another delay. So now we are 3 years removed when this movie was originally supposed to come out. And to add on top of that, by the time that this movie does come out, even though it wasn't necessarily completely impacted by this, the writer strike happened in 2023. What does that mean for this? Well, even though the movie already had the script and it's already been filmed, they can't do a whole lot of marketing, future planning, press tours, and how people looked at these movies. They're all changed dramatically. There's not really much that they could do. Which, I mean, if you go back to my last video talking about the Marvels, you could really see how the this really affected them promoting the movie, which Guardians, to be fair, didn't need the promotion because it was already a well-established franchise. But unfortunately, we do come to the end of an era ultimately. As this movie is coming out, James Gunn accepts a position at DC as a co-head. This is his swan song to Marvel. This movie is not just the end of the Guardians that we know. It's also the end of Gunn's entire run with Marvel. Now, I do believe he said that he could potentially come back to maybe do a movie, I think, or work with them on a movie. I think so. I could be wrong. Um, but as you're watching this movie, you can just feel it that this is the last time you're going to see James Gunn directing Chris Pratt, Zoe, Dave, um, his brother Sean, voiced by Bradley Cooper, Palm, all these people in the Guardians. Obviously, some of them moved on to DC to work with him because everybody loves working with James Gunn, apparently. I don't blame you. You know, he looks like a great guy to hang out with. But yeah, it's kind of sad when you think about it because these are some perfect movies. The Guardians had their backs to the wall from the beginning and they defied expectations and they broke down barriers. But the only fault that I have with this is, well, not even a fault. I feel like now that I started writing the script, I realized that in almost every MCU trilogy, third movie, there's always some kind of loss. Iron Man loses his arc reactor. Steve loses his shield. Thor loses Mjolnir. The Avengers lose. Spider-Man loses Aunt May. At first, Guardians, I was like, nobody died, so there's no loss there. But when you truly think about it, this is the end of the Guardians that we know it, as well as Gunn in the MCU. So we did still lose something at the end of the day. And it's a damn shame. You know, kudos to Gunn getting DC. I'm a fan of Superman. I'm a fan of everything that they've came out with so far. I can only hope for the best for him, but I can only just imagine that if he stayed with Marvel, if they never fired him, he'd probably be slowly working up his ladder to eventually one day replace Kevin Feige. Like, I feel like they would have been the perfect passing the baton, if you will. But ultimately, I'm glad that we got what we have, and we have these two amazing heads of two amazing franchises making excellent products that we know. So, yes, between getting fired, rehired, massive delays, MCU changes, and industry chaos, it's honestly kind of crazy that we got the movie that we did, because this movie is arguably one of the best Guardians of the Galaxy movies that they made. It's easily one of the best Phase 4 projects that they've made. And in a weird way, all that made everything that happened made it just a better movie at the end of the day. It it was the perfect ending for everybody. And it's not just another sequel. And I think the moral of this story that I'm telling you and the story of the Guardians of the Galaxy and James Gunn is no matter if you're a misfit or not, whether you get fired from your job or not, no matter what, and your back is to the wall, if you just keep pounding and trying, you're going to break through that wall. You're going to find the light at the end of the tunnel, and you're going to make it through. So, Gunn, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you did with Guardians. Thank you for so far what you've done with Superman. I cannot wait to see what is next in the DCU with Lanterns, Supergirl, which I don't think will come out by the time this video goes out, but I could be wrong, and just what we're going to experience later. So, with that being said, I do hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Drop a comment to let me know what you would think if this movie came out in 2020, if Gunn wasn't fired. Give me your ideas. Don't forget to like this video, share with your friends, and subscribe for more content. Because soon after this, we're going to start talking about the TV shows next. The next one is going to be the Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I'm very excited for that because that is probably my favorite Marvel Disney Plus show. So until next time, this has been a Geek Takeover, signing off. Down, stop production.